Over the past week, we have seen some fantastic interviews. From videos to articles, many creators, as well as journalists, had the opportunity to sit down with folks like Tyson Green, who is the game director for Destiny 2, Allison Lurs, who's the narrative director, and Robbie Stevens, the assistant game director. Needless to say, these folks are essentially the ones steering Destiny 2 right now. And I highly advise that anyone that wants to know the full scope and context of these interviews, 1000% you should check out each and every one of those interviews and articles. We'll have those linked down below. However, today's video is going to be a more distilled, summarized version of the questions and answers that we have pulled from all of those. So without further ado, let's begin. Question number 1, is there a red subclass? Tyson confirmed it is not real, but he did go on to say that, quote, not saying there couldn't be one someday, but it was just a rumor. He even went on to say that he likes the color red. Question number 2, are there any plans to explore non-paracausal sources of power now that we're moving out of the Light and Darkness saga? From Tyson on this one, there are no specific plans for that currently, but we'll be dabbling with different forces in the solar system. Tyson mentioned the different abilities we'll be using on Kepler and says that when they put things in their sandbox space, they often end up revisiting them. So you could definitely see them exploring some different ability types in the future. Now the team has joked internally about a Matter Spark Crucible mode. Rick Ackes brought up how in HyperNet Current, there's the Sparrow section, and he would love a Matter Spark Traversal section. Even my own editing team believes there may even be a portion of the raid that might even involve Matter Spark. Now the next question involves Renegades. Renegades is very Star Wars inspired. Are there any plans for Force abilities, Force subclass, or Force exotics? Tyson says we can't talk much about Renegades today as we have a whole revealed plan for that later this year, but there will be aspects of that release that can only happen in that type of collab. Now, are there any themes that haven't yet been explored by a current subclass? Tyson says there was a time when the 5th subclass Strand was going to be about poison, decay, debuffs, and damage. They also flirted with the idea of a kinetic subclass that would be about raw physical forces. He used words to describe it like concussion and violence. So there are definitely spaces they haven't explored yet in terms of subclasses. Are there any plans to add more options for our darkness subclasses? Currently, they only have one super and one melee option. Tyne says there are no concrete plans today, but now that Prismatic has been built, we have more room to come back around and look at our subclasses again. The team is aware of these issues, specifically with the darkness subclasses, and they want to do something about it. Are there any plans to add more abilities, fragments, aspects, and supers to Prismatic, or is the subclass finalized? Tyson says no concrete plans right now, but the general plan is yes, at some point. But this will likely be after more attention has been given to other subclasses first, since Prismatic is the most recent addition. Now this was followed up by mentioning the Transcendence grenades and how each class only has one, and if that is something they could be expanded on, and also if it's possible for them to take different forms. For example, how the Hunter grenade is like a spike grenade, but could it be a different grenade instead, but the same elements remain? Now Tyson said here again, there is no specific plan, but he thinks Transcendence is a great area to expand as it's a very unique thing about Prismatic subclasses. In the past, Tyson has wondered if similar things like Transcendence could exist on other subclasses. He mentioned the bar you have to fill on Prismatic with light and dark damage, and what if it was on Stasis and you filled it by freezing enemies, or on Solar when collecting fire sprites or standing in sunspots. And essentially that would build a heat meter and then you light on fire. No lie, Tyson and Mac here were brainstorming, and let me just say, let him cook, dude. I love this. I didn't even think what it would be like to have Transcendence on each of our classes. But you want to talk about something that would level the playing field between all the classes, bringing it up to parity with Prismatic, this is it then. Now, why doesn't the Transcendence meter fill up when you rally to a flag? It was mentioned that the team went back and forth on this during the final shape development, and the reason that they didn't do this is they feel like rally flags already skew encounter design to have a massive front load of damage outputs, and it would also make Prismatic even more of an obvious choice than it already is, since you would essentially have 2 supers right out the gates. A potential balancing option they thought about was that wiping would reset your Transcendence meter, but they thought players would hate that. If other classes had a meter equivalent, it would bring more parity, but right now, no plans for rallies to fill the meter. Now, everyone has really enjoyed seeing the new weapon types we've been receiving over the last year or so: rocket sidearms, healing auto rifles, etc. Will this development of new weapons and new archetypes continue and be a normal thing? Tyson says it will ebb and flow. We can't just make rocket frames for everything. The team is always looking for low-hanging fruits as well as holes and gaps to fill in the sandbox. I don't think we'll see huge surges of these every release, as to some degree it destabilizes the game. We want to release these at a pace where they settle into the sandbox, like rocket rocket sidearms did and avoid bringing in a single thing that is too good and then having to later nerf it into oblivion. Now, are there any exotic armor pieces on the rework and buff radar we can know about? Tyson says not right now that they can share, but something that he really encourages is letting the teams completely rework and bring new life into old exotics, and believes that it can be just as much fun and interesting as designing brand new ones. Honestly, I gotta agree with this, guys. Listen, man, we've got a lot of exotics in the game, and I am getting sick of seeing the same ones over and over. And this applies to both PvE and PvP. I want to see some spice brought back to some of our most forgotten exotic armor pieces. Now, are there any plans in the future to add more perk options on our exotic class items? Tyson doesn't think they'll go back and add more perks to our existing ones, but if they were going to do an experiment like that again, they'd probably develop a new one. Current exotic class items were specifically designed for the Final Shape expansion, as well as the Pale Hearts, and it really wouldn't make sense to ask players to go back to this older content instead of engaging with newer activities or pursuits. Now, is there a number of new set bonuses targeted every update? Tyson said the plan is for every new armor set release moving forward to have set bonuses. Previous bonuses could show up again on new armor sets as well. For example, a tier 2 bonus could show up on another set in the future, but the tier 4 bonus for it would be different though, which is really interesting, guys, that the 4 piece is what they would change. In terms of the new gear tiering system, what will crafted weapons look like? Tyson says right now, there is no crafting or tiered weapons. These are two exclusively different systems. For them, they see crafting as a way to be able to catch up, likely at the end of a season or an expansion. Those two systems, gear tiers and crafting, will need to be brought into alignment over time, or even a replacement for that functionality will need to be developed. As of right now, you cannot craft a tiered weapon. Is there something in the sandbox you would like to tweak or evolve in the future? Tyson named a few examples without any time frames. There's properties of the artifact, especially folding it into loadouts, which technically speaking is very difficult to do right now. They talked about combatant counterplay and how they can give enemies more pushback without making them bullet sponges. He's also interested in exploring vehicle sandboxes, as Bungie has a history with that in past games, as well as the next evolution of subclass mechanics. No lie, a Warthog in Destiny would go hard. Now, data and numbers can be a pain point sometimes inside of Destiny with build crafting. Are there any plans to put numerical pieces of data or percentages in game, or are third-party sources doing a good enough job? Tyson said that third-party sources do such a good job that it does take some pressure off of Bungie, but Tyson does personally want to start exposing some of that numerical data to players directly. One of the reasons they haven't done it yet is the people who need to build those systems or menus in game are also the ones building those abilities or perks, and it's hard to peel them off that instead. He does hope to be able to do this for an upcoming release though. Now, it's mentioned that the firing range should help out with letting players figure stuff out for themselves in game. There are already screens for DPS, damage, and more. Could there be a screen for debuffs applied to a particular enemy that you're testing on, or a screen for buffs you have for yourself? Tyson said that this isn't a suggestion he has heard before, but the thing that is exciting about the firing range is that once it stood up and live in the game, they can start to take in suggestions to further incorporate other aspects into it for the future. As someone who does damage testing, dude, the firing range is literally one of the best things Bungie has ever made. And I was like expecting something more in line with like Remnant's firing range, which is good, but I definitely wasn't expecting what Bungie has cooked up here. The ability to choose literally every single enemy type, the laser there in the side that allows us to test damage resist. I gotta give credit where it's due, man. And whatever team cooked this up, dude, they cooked hard. Now, the next part of this is going to move into narrative. How clear is the vision for the new Fate Saga compared to the Light and Darkness Saga that just concluded? Allison said she doesn't believe in comparisons, but she does believe in having a plan. She says they know exactly where they are going and roughly how much time it would take to get there. One of their goals was to know where they were heading, and planning out the big story beats allowed them to seed in big stuff early. Tyson even chimed in and said that the Light and Darkness Saga, they were just learning a lot about it while in the process of developing it, and that there's some elements they didn't have the opportunity to develop in the ways they plan to do so for the Fate Saga. Allison finished by saying there are elements they'll introduce that won't be fully paid off for years to come. Now, what is Bungie's philosophy for implementing secrets in the Edge of Fate? Allison said, we get to plant some stuff in the Edge of Fate that we won't deliver on until 3 years from now. The general input from both Allison and Robbie was that because they have a complete understanding of the overall story arc taking place in this saga, there's room inside that structure to shift the spotlight based on what the community finds most interesting. The chess puzzle is an example of what secrets are possible to implement to set up future stories and tease new ideas that we'll be experiencing firsthand in the Edge of Fate. Now, in terms of secrets, there are a lot of puzzles, lots of secret chests, but why should the player player be doing these? Tyson says a lot of those chests will have good gear for you as you're playing through, good power bumps, and they drop at higher tiers. Admittedly, some of these are for players who like to explore. He understands for other players who just want to power climb, do the hard stuff, get builds together, etc., and that these secrets might not be there for those type of players. Now, Bungie's surprised by the large part of the community that wants to leave the solar system. Allison and Tyson both agree that is not surprising at all. Tyson continues by saying, sometimes an IP can get itself in trouble by abandoning its roots and moving too far away. It's not like they aren't going to do that, as they already have on a few occasions. But if a new player comes in and the very first place you go is Fundament or Tor Bottle, they're not going to know where the hell this place is. Are these places they want to go? Yeah, sure. Should they go right now, starting out a brand new Saga? Maybe now is not the best time. I guess I get this, but no lie, man. An expansion that brings us to either Fundament or Tor Bottle as a veteran Destiny player, that would be so dope. Now, will there be additional aspects of the Echoes themselves that haven't been explored with the episodes yet? Allison said that she pleads the fifth, but she says she views any element introduced as ingredients that they should be looking for later down the line. So essentially, hell yeah. Now this brings us to the development portion of these interviews. What is the #1 goal Edge of Fate is trying to accomplish? Tyson replies, making Destiny both more consistent, but also more innovative. The truth is, while developing and dealing with crises, things are hard because the game wasn't designed and thought out to last as long as it has. It's really hard to break out of the mold, and it's tempting to keep doing the same thing until it stops working. The goal with Edge of Fate is for the core to feel really tight, for expansions and events to be more innovative and break the mold in ways that past expansions couldn't. Guys, we did a video here recently that simply just asked players, why did you quit Destiny? Many of them said things like PvP or sunsetting, but there was also a group of people that said that Destiny became too repetitive, that the season-to-season cycle was too formulaic. Whether unknowingly or knowingly, Bungie had created a mold that it just could not break out of. And we could talk about this for days, but I'm glad that Tyson recognizes this, and I'm hoping Edge of Fate does break us out of that mold. Now, Allison said the strongest stories are built off the foundation of characters making choices rather than things just happening to a character. In Dragon Ball Z, for example, there's always a new thing or a new big bad guy. The entire Fate saga happens because Orin made a choice to quit. Having story momentum be built via choices we make, moving the world and making the gigantic thing happen rather than just it's time for plot to happen. That is her goal with the story. TLDR, things need to move in an organic way. Now, many players are looking for that fresh starting points. Some believe that requires Destiny 3. What is Bungie doing in Edge of Fate to make players want to jump back in? Tyson replies, we're doing two fundamental things. The first is streamlining the game. If you were to return last year, the director is like a Christmas tree. Quests, triumphs, challenges, weekly challenges, bounties, guardian ranks, etc. Things are just blinking at you. It's hard knowing what to even do. The portal is intended to be smoother and easier to open, pick an activity, and start playing. Almost everything inside the portal gives you progress towards better gear, as well as more challenging activities and more aspirational targets. At the same time, veteran players don't want a simpler game. They want a deeper, richer, more complex game, which is why this is a very hard problem to solve. Now, he continues by saying that the second thing that they're doing is making the power and progression much more approachable and accessible. Smaller numbers in Edge of Fate versus max power being 2100. There's also going to be a tooltip telling you what the old power equivalent would have been. And one more thing Bungie is doing is making it easy to see what gear is new and what will be benefiting from artifact bonuses, etc. Now, Allison says one of the principles the writers have is to never punish the player for not knowing something. In the new saga, we want everyone to feel like they can come along for the ride. She states that anytime we plan on referencing a super deep lore cut, we want to make sure that moment is giving a thumbs up to players for remembering what it is. And if not, it will be explained in a natural and organic way. Dude, hallelujah. Now, Edge of Fate has a lot of puzzles. What led the team to add puzzle elements, and have they seen good testing response to it so far? Allison said it was one of the earliest conversations we had at the leadership level. We wanted to try something new, and a handful of the team really wanted to do a Metroidvania. Now, Tyson said we had established a paradigm of expansions being places where you can innovate. In the past, we've had certain ideas for themes, like making a space western, which turned into Forsaken, making an 80s action movie, which turned into Lightfall. In this one, we gravitated towards the dungeon activities, which have both puzzle and exploration mechanics. This then led to the Metroidvania genre, which does similar things, which Dreaming City actually did as well. So we really wanted to lean into that. In internal and user research playtesting, the response has been very positive. It gets better as the mechanics and the polishing matures, and we hope player response will be positive. Now, are there any plans for more Crucible maps? Tyson replies that there are no plans right at this moment. moments. What we're focusing on for Crucible is a stronger reward experience. We want a route for the highest tiers of gear to be earned via the Crucible. And we'll keep making maps, but nothing to announce for this release. Now, the final question. Could Destiny deliver a campaign in a completely different genre? For instance, horror. From Robbie, Bungie's goal is to take aspects of different genres, but put it through the lens of Destiny. Find inspiration, keep what's core to Destiny, but make it fresh and new. Maybe we'll do something horror in the future. Trevor in Zero Hour is an example where that has happened in the past. Dude, I would actually say even further than that is the Dead Man's Tale quest. If anything, Prestige was just eerie. No lie, Bungie could take somewhat of a creepier approach. I wouldn't say like Dead Space levels of horror, but dude, when I was a kid, the Flood terrified me. But I'm curious to see what Bungie does with Destiny in the future. So guys, those are the interview questions and the breakdowns. Feel free to check out the interviews themselves. And luckily for us, in July, we'll have an opportunity to sit down with some of the developers at Bungie and conduct our own interview right before Edge of Fate launches. If you have any questions that you would like for us to ask directly, feel free to comment them down below. And I know we're going to be seeing some live streams from Bungie, so if you want to circle back to this video at any point to drop a question or two, we'll be collecting those over the next few weeks going into that interview with Bungie. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.